Hello. Today we're going to talk about the future time, right? We're going to discuss Unit 2 from Advanced Language Practice. And we're going to see what it is to predict. Please note that I won't be using the dictionary a lot because actually, well, there isn't a lot the dictionary can do for me. But in this unit, what we're going to do is to talk about as it says here, the future time. I may have mentioned before that in English, we don't have a tense for the future. Remember, we have talked about inflectional morphemes, and we don't have anything that can change a verb so that it has future reference, right? We do have something that makes it show it as a present, like the S, and we do have something that makes it show it is in the past, which is ed, right? But there's nothing for the future time. So actually in English, we use several different forms. Mainly, we use will and going to. And my job today is to show you how different the two are. And initially, you will see they're very different, uh, very similar as well. And at the same time that on many occasions, we can use either one or the other with different meanings or simply exchange them and the meaning will not change. But well, let's get started. Will means prediction, and prediction is to say something that will happen in the future, right? When we predict, we can only do this, like the forecast does, by basing our predictions on something we have seen before, right? That's why you can predict an earthquake, for example, or a certain outcome. So when we think about will, you're going to think about prediction based on previous information. I'm going to use this as a board. Okay, so this is what will is to us. Prediction based on previous information. This is one of the meanings, right? And to be frank, please remember will is also a modal. We're going to see it later, and it has many other added meanings. But will has this predictive sense, which can be divided into two big areas, which are less important, to be frank. So as long as you remember based on previous information, I'm going to be happy. And you explain it, right? But in general, we can divide this into two areas. One is just probability, likelihood, conjecture, or simply guessing, right? That's when you predict something and you say, I think it will rain, right? It's a kind of guess, right? And or I think she'll be here soon because she told you she would be here. Um, Another one is called or is described as having analysis or judgment. What is that? I have actually studied information and I can make a certain prediction, such as I don't know, this stadium will hold 50,000 people, right? I have counted all the seats and I can tell you that's as many as can fit this stadium, right? So it's not guesswork, it is analysis. Now, this difference is less important. As I said, I would like you to remember that will is prediction based on previous information. So when I say, as it says here in this example, I'll be late home this evening, I can tell you that because I know that I am working and the kinds of things I'm doing right now will take up more time than than they usually do. So I will be late. The company will make a profit next year. Notice that in this case we can see more a kind of analysis and a judgment, right? Because to decide that or to say that there will be a profit, I need to have seen the accounts, right? And to have done some calculations. So this is a predictive use of will, right? Sometimes people speak of will as assumption. I will discourage you to use that term because it is unspecific. I wanted to think of will as prediction based on previous information. For example, next sentence says, that'll be Jim, at the door. How do you recognize someone's bell ringing? I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can tell that there are some members of the family or some friends of yours that ring the bell in a very specific way, and you can tell it is them. Or you know the time of their arrival, and that's how you can predict based on the previous analysis and judgment of the information you have, that is the person you think it is, right? So as you can see, this is a very specific use of will. Now, there's another use of will that we're going to see here, which is called here immediate decision. I prefer to refer to this use of will as decision made at the moment of speaking, right? So it is very quick, right? And it is used mostly to volunteer to do something, right? To help in a way. So you open the fridge, there's no more milk. You say, I'll go out and buy some, right? You drop something on the floor and you offer to pick it up and you say, I'll get it for you, right? Or even the bell, right? I'll get it for you, or I'll answer the phone. Usually in the first person singular, right? You can use it also in the first person plural, will do it, right? And sometimes in jest, trying to make a joke, rather than volunteer yourself, which is the normal thing to do. We understand that when we volunteer, we do it. You may say, don't worry, she'll do it, or he'll do it, right? As if you could force somebody to volunteer, which is clearly impossible, right? Okay, that's the second meaning for will. And now we're going to go to go into. And it says here intentions or plans. And I want you to think about these two things as completely different from a predictive use. When you predict, you have previous information, as it says here. When you plan, when you have an intention, it's something that is in your head, right? Some grammarians say that this use of going to can be equated with I want to. It means it gives you a sense of a strong expectation because the person is practically saying, I want to, right? And there is, think about going to as a present intention with future fulfillment, right? It will be fulfilled, the action will be fulfilled in the future. Now, please be aware that we're talking about the combination that goes, I'm going to do something, right? I need an infinitive after do, not I'm going sailing, for example, or I'm going to my mother's, right? That's a present continuous. The going to form that has this specific meaning is the one that is followed by another verb. So as we said, there is premeditation, but what you should really bear in mind is that for everything I have said, the planning, the intention is in your head. So it is not something that is public. So basically, if you decide out of it, you decide to cancel, you don't have to do anything because you didn't tell anybody initially. That's the beauty of this meaning of going to, which is going to contrast with the present continuous or fixed arrangements, right? Okay, this is one meaning for going to, right? And so as I said, this is the one that we call intention or plan. I would like you to think about the two together, right? Because sometimes it looks more like a plan, sometimes it looks more like an intention, which feels less formed, right? Now, the other meaning of going to is the one that is explained here as event whose cause is present or evident, or as I also like to say, future culmination of a present cause. What does this language mean? It feels very obscure, right? Okay, this is about an immediate future. Remember that with will we had that immediate decision. Well, this is an immediate future. It is very much connected with the present, immediate present, right there. And that's when you say, look at the tree, it's going to fall. Usually as a warning, right? To tell someone something's happening right there and you need to do something about it, basically. That's the idea, right? For this use of the going to form, we need some evidence in the present. That's why we always say when we see a woman who is pregnant, we say she's going to have a baby, right? You can speak of a bump, her bump. sorry, I can do it like this. Or she's got a bun in the oven, right? A bun in the oven. Maybe, yes, a baby bump, right? The woman's stomach when she's pregnant, and a bun. Yes, you speak of someone as having a bun in the oven. Yes, she has a bun in the oven, meaning she's pregnant, right? Or she's in the family way. We also say that, in the family way. Well, for all those things, we can say she's going to have a baby, right? Why can we say that? Because we can see the baby coming, right? And in this case, to be frank, it's not that immediate, right? But we see the evidence. This use of going to needs evidence. We use it a lot to stop people from falling or avoiding, in order to help them avoid some sort of collision or something, right? Very good. Now, so this is the second meaning for, as you can see, we have two meanings for will and two meanings for going to, right? And now we're going to talk about another way of referring to the future, this time with a tense, which is the present continuous. You can say with this use, I am seeing the dentist next week, right? This is what we call fixed arrangement. It differs from the going to form, remember, because going to was in your head, so you don't need to cancel. Now, if you have made a fixed arrangement, as in I'm seeing the doctor next week, if you decide not to go, the right thing is to call in advance and cancel the appointment, right? So that's why this is fixed, and it shows that there are two people involved, right? So remember, the other one, going to, is in your head. It's an intention, whereas the present continuous refers to specific arrangement that you have made with somebody else. So it becomes much more categorical, yes, much more absolute. And usually there's a time reference, as it says here, right? Well, you can make impersonal arrangements, right? And you can say the Gap is opening a store, right? In, I don't know, in Buenos Aires. Not happening anytime soon right now, right? Or the orchestra is playing Mozart, right? Now, we can begin to take a step back and say, what happens if I say, I'm staying home today, and how different is that from I'm going to stay home today? Well, I'm staying home today has its focus on a plan, an intention that you have in your head. Sorry, it's a fixed arrangement. I'm staying home. I got you there, right? The focus is on the arrangement, right? So this is fixed, and you can see that in this case, maybe there isn't an arrangement with anybody, but possibly you're announcing your family or whoever lives with you that you're staying, so now they know. Now, when you say, I'm going to stay home all day, the focus is on your intention, right? Not on telling people about it, but rather on your own decision to do this, right? So basically, that's the difference. Please note that with this present continuous form, we can also make more idiomatic choices, right? So I think I took this from a novel. I am never getting my hopes up again. Or, well, that's very literary. Maybe we can go to something simpler first. Somebody wants to do something, and you simply say, I'm not doing that, right? Or say you are at a lecture and you feel it is very boring, and say, I'm going, right? Now, notice that in this use of the present continuous, there isn't a fixed arrangement. So what is happening here, because these are more idiomatic uses, right? With more figurative meaning. Idiomatic uses usually have to do with single specific uses for specific circumstances. And what has happened is that while the present continuous has this meaning, this sense of a fixed arrangement, I am using solely the part of the meaning that is categorical, right? Remember I told you earlier that I'm seeing the dentist next week comes across as more categorical because I made an arrangement. Now, what happens in the idiomatic use of I'm going or I'm not going is, remember, we have also talked about components of meaning. Okay, the component that is categorical becomes activated, and it is the only one that is being put across when you say I'm not going. And the same when the character said I'm never getting my hopes up again, right? So it's a kind of arrangement in this case, maybe with herself. I am beginning to show you that while we have a specific meaning for each choice, then speakers will use these choices to their advantage to put across different ideas, okay? Apart from this, what will happen is that we will be able to vary and enrich these grammatical choices for tenses. That's why we have the future continuous in English. I'll be painting the kitchen. Now, in this case, we are combining the two ideas, the prediction because maybe in this case it sounds a bit odd because it sounds more like a plan, right? But maybe the fixed part of the plan is in the I'll be painting in the continuous form, right? Which, by the way, also brings with it the question of being temporary, right? And something that will be in progress in the future. Something also that is inevitable because this is a continuous form, which is a fixed arrangement, and the fixed arrangement is happening, whatever the case. And maybe also that it doesn't put across the idea of something finished, but rather, as I said before, in progress, right? So that's interesting, right? We can begin to mix them. Another possibility is point number 3 on the next page, when you say, will you be going to the shops? Will you be doing this? I will be seeing someone next week. Now, apart from adding this idea, having this concept of a sort of intention in the future that becomes rather fixed because of the continuous form, the element that becomes activated here in will you be doing something is that of politeness. Remember that the continuous forms can communicate politeness, and this is what is happening in this particular use. Will you be doing that? So once again, this becomes idiomatic, right? Because it is restricted to certain uses and certain circumstances. There will be the future continuous can also be used for a fixed arrangement and a plan together, the two together, as in the band will be performing live in Paris, right? So I would say that in this case, we have the continuous form that says this is fixed in the future, right? There's the prediction part, because maybe we're predicting all the shows that the band is has scheduled for the next week. Oh, sorry, I forgot to. So, well, it's a mixture of the two, right? But basically, what is stronger here, rather than the use of will, it's the fixed event in the future. Now, the next point is that we have the future perfect, right? And please note here that we have this form, years. In 2 years' time, I will have finished this book, or by the end of the month, I will have been working for this firm for a year. Now, in 2 years' time, is focused on the action. Why does it suggest that? On the action finished in the future. So when we get to the end of this period of 2 years, something will have finished. So the focus is on completion. So I was drawing your attention to the fact that the apostrophe is after the apostrophe is after the S because this is a period of 2 years, right? While the other sentence, by the end of the month, I will have been working, right, refers to that duration, right? Now, you could try, and this is something that I always suggest, to switch these uses and say, can I say, would it be possible to say, in 2 years' time, I will have been working? No, actually, in 2 years' time, collegates, we say, right? Collegate with the present future perfect, right? I'll have finished, right? Now, you may say by the end of the month, I will have finished this book. Now, this question of using one form instead of the other is something that we will be doing in class. Let's see, does a sentence change, or a concept, or something you want to put across change if I use will or going to? Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. Sometimes the rules will be very clear, some other times they won't, right? So let's carry on a bit. We also have the future perfect to express assumption. You won't have heard the news, right? She won't have done this. She won't have received I don't know, the payment yet. This is to make a guess as to what may have happened, because you don't know, right? And once again, a very specific use. Now, we also have other forms to talk about the future, and a very interesting one, is the verb to be plus the to infinitive. So you say, all students are to assemble in the hall. Again, this is future reference, right? The difference in this one is that it is formal, right? The use of are to do something is very formal. That's why we usually say we are to be married in November. You can also say we're getting married in November, right? And simply in this case, we're getting married. This is a present continuous showing fixed arrangement. Whereas if I say we are to be married, this becomes a little bit more formal, right? It refers to the formal arrangement of getting married, right? We also use are to for prohibitions. You must have heard it. You're not to do this. You are to do that. You're not to touch this, right? So used a lot for commands in a very formal way. And also in general for instructions and orders, right? You are to stay here, as I said earlier, right? For maybe more official or formal contexts, right? All right, the other expressions suggested here are be about to, on the point of, or be due to, right? I think the play is about to start, meaning on the verge of starting right now. Mary is on the point of resigning, about to, right? And the play is due to start, is about to start, same idea. These are some lexical suggestions, right? Remember that there are other things that are due, like rent, a meeting, babies are due, right? And even buses are due to arrive, right? They're supposed to arrive. Not in Argentina, as you can imagine. All right. The next point is that we can use the present or the present perfect to talk about the future. Remember that we said in the previous unit about the present time that the present tense, right, looks into the future and into the past, because it is actually all inclusive. It is very generic. And that's why we can say when we get there, we'll have dinner, or when we have had a rest, we'll go out. Notice that both have a focus on something finishing, right? And the present perfect is really good at showing finishedness, and that's why we say when we have had a rest. Now, these are colligational uses, again, when colligates with the present simple or the present perfect. Notice that this in Spanish becomes cuando lleguemos, cuando hayamos descansado. This becomes a subjunctive mood, right? Be very careful. Finally, we have calendar uses, which are very useful. We use the present tense. You know that we can, as I said right now, we can use the present to talk about the future. In this case, you're talking about very specific events that are timetabled, like this. Timetabled, right? So the idea is that we know they're there because they're parts of the calendar. Sometimes people speak of calendar. Well, it is here, calendar references, right? So people refer to this as a calendar use, right? So Tom retires in 3 years. The train leaves at 4. You can also use will here, right? And they're very, very similar, right? Though naturally when you use will, you're focusing on the predictive aspect, whereas in the present, you are focusing on a factual aspect, right? Christmas is on a Tuesday, next week I have an operation, right? The next entries are about using verbs like hope, expect, doubt. Remember, we saw them actually in the previous unit to make announcements, right? There's nothing interesting about this. Only I would like to single out that hope tends to colligate with the present and will, right? I hope it doesn't rain. I hope it won't rain. But we do have certain uses of hope plus the past, like in the song, I hope you had the time of your life, right? And just means about to happen, right? Okay, so I wanted to give you a very good summary of this unit, and I would like you to begin to think about particularly will and go into as completely different ways of looking at the future. Okay, that is all. Thank you.